That is excellent service, Mr. Chairman. I just walked in and here I am. Thank you. So good morning, Representative Ritter and Representative Srinivasan and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to deliver testimony on House Bill 5128, an act concerning funds appropriated to the Department of Developmental Services, or henceforth DDS. The bill requires, as you know, that all funds appropriated to DDS that are unexpended at the end of fiscal years 16 and 17 remain available for expenditure by the department. During this time of extreme budgetary distress for the state, and I can't emphasize that enough, it's critical to ensure that intellectually disabled people and their families receive adequate support and services. I can't emphasize that enough either. And that is not the case today, and this population is growing. I support this bill, but I would like to make two suggestions that I think would improve it. They're based on the idea that if you are going to do this, and if you are going to require that funds that are not expended remain available to the same department, then you have to do it seriously. And these are my two suggestions. First, I recognize that it's not necessarily possible or desirable to include language in legislation that would constrain legislators in future cycles. Nevertheless, the needs of this population are serious enough to warrant provisions for the future. So I would therefore ask the committee to consider including language that would require review and consideration of this provision at the time each biennial budget is developed and passed, rather than just letting it drop after this particular budget cycle. And then my second suggestion is that as written, as we look at the bill today, I believe its language would allow the legislature in developing the 2018-19 budget to consider the unexpended funds remaining in the DDS budget as part of its budget going forward. If the budget process changes significantly between now and then, as we've heard that it might, this comment may be less relevant. I'm referring to the suggestion that we move to zero-based budgeting instead of current services. However, if the current services method or something similar is preserved or restored, this would be an important issue because it might lead to a future decrease in the DDS appropriation for the next biennium. There's a similar situation I can use as an example. From time to time, we find that the DOT raises rail fares. Say they raise rail fares this year to get a $10 million increase in revenue for a given year. And at the same time, instead of saying, okay, now the Special Transportation Fund gets $10 million extra, they actually reduce the appropriation to the DOT by a corresponding amount. So they've raised the rail fares, but the Special Transportation Fund doesn't get anything extra. So were these unexpended funds to remain available for DDS to spend in the coming biennium, in the next biennium, then it would seem to be working at cross purposes to then cut the forthcoming DDS budget by the corresponding amount. So I would ask the committee, if you think this may be the case, to consider including language that would prevent such a future budget reduction resulting from the passage of the bill. I thank the committee for its attention to this important bill and respectfully ask your consideration of these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions from the committee? Representative Srinivasan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Lavielle, for being here and for your testimony this afternoon. We appreciate that very much. And thank you for all that you do on behalf of people with developmental disabilities. We appreciate that. The state appreciates that very much as well. My question to you is, in the years gone by, what has been the track record in terms of funds that have not been utilized, that you know, the concern that you have that should be retained in the budget and not be, you know, and not be removed by the budget because the fact that it had not been used before.
Well, I'm really concerned about two things. One is that the funds are allowed to lapse, that they find their way back to the general fund, where I'm afraid I can't always account for what they're used for, but not for services to intellectually disabled people. And also to recent continued, this is not exactly your question, but we all know that in the last couple of years, and really going back farther, DDS has continued to suffer rather substantial cuts. People remain on the waiting list for services. Sometimes if people have been told that if they have been on a waiting list and they have accepted another type of services, they are taken off the waiting list without being told. All sorts of things that really have not hit this community well. And I think that as we look at populations in terms of which are the most needy, this one's right up there. And so seeing any of these funds that have first been allocated then be taken away for use somewhere else in the general fund is really inappropriate.
And I definitely agree with that. You know, that is, to take those funds away is definitely very inappropriate. And I want to thank you also for that wonderful example you gave of the transportation rates going up, and then how that fund, at the end of the day, the special transportation does not get the extra money, though the commuters are paying a largish amount at this particular time. That once again brings to light the important point that the funding mechanism has got to be clear and transparent, so that if the money is raised, that money goes for the purpose for which it was intended. Thank you very much, Representative.
Thank you, Representative.